A couple of you have mentioned this already before, and that's the connectivity issue. I mean, I don't know about you, I sometimes find it impossible to make a mobile phone call when I'm driving from one side of Shropshire to the other without losing signal. Some parts of the county, we know very rural corners don't have access to high-speed broadband. So I want to just ask really the panellists, you know, where you feel our infrastructure sits in terms of how easy it is to allow businesses to compete on an equal footing with some of the more urban parts of the UK. Ro, do you want to start us off with this?
I mean, we have tragically fallen behind our peers and competitors on many fronts. You look at connectivity, you know, service sector on the economy, all sorts of things. Now, on connectivity especially, given where we are at the moment, I'm a bit of an IT geek. I know Daniel would say Rishi Sunak's an IT geek, but he can't even use a wireless payment card. But on the connectivity, now, I'm just going to give you an example. I was in Kabul, Afghanistan in April 2021. I went to the villages around the Afghan capital. You were meant to be having the worst mobile signals there. It was showing me 3G, but I could watch a YouTube video. You go around Shifnal, you go around Albrighton, around here, it shows 5G, but it's not loading a simplest video. Now, we're talking about connectivity. Businesses require fast broadband. It's not to be seen, not to be felt. We're talking about AI, the evolution of AI. We cannot harness any of those benefits that we're always talking about. Connectivity, future of, I mean, other countries are talking about 6G. We're not even getting 4G right or 5G right. So the fact that the Tories have not done it for 14 years, you'd need to be holding them accountable as to why. You've been having power, you've wasted our money, you've squandered 14 years of opportunities of this country. It's time to change that. And change is only possible when you have people in charge who are not busy fighting each other, stabbing each other in the back, day in, day out, but are governing for the interest of the party. Shropshire needs a Labour government. Shropshire needs a science and technology centre supporting its telecommunication services. We need our companies working together, businesses working together to find a solution that is viable, that is fit for the future and also fit for our children. You go around schools, they don't have access to proper ITs. You cannot talk about AI or any future IT projects without having proper connectivity.
Thank you. Alan, talk to me about connectivity. How do you see it?
I mean, obviously, it's very important. I mean, being from Telford, we don't really have that issue. Everything's sort of super fast. So I'll leave it to the other candidates to answer that question.
Absolutely. Okay. Julian, go on. Give us a Shrewsbury perspective then. We've got two Shrewsburys against one Telford here tonight.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I will try and address the whole question of Shropshire, though, because I think that this question gets to the heart of how do we overcome the difference in opportunity, unequal difference in opportunity between urban and rural areas. And I think that the broadband connectivity is one part of that. And I think the solution is simple. It requires, you know, significant investment. A small charge on everybody's phone line across the country would allow that level of investment so that everybody can have the levels of broadband, which frankly, you can have in Estonia. You know, I don't understand why we can't have it in the UK. So I think that investment is possible. It can be done. It's about raising the money and being brave enough to do that. But there are other ways that we can bring up, equalise the opportunities and the connectivity in rural areas. And I think that a key one is public transport. Interestingly, I'm sure at some stage Daniel is going to promote his disastrous North West Relief Road project. But interestingly, when we heard from people from the Business Chamber at one meeting recently, I'm a Shropshire councillor and I was in a meeting, and they were asked, you know, how keen are you on the North West Road? And actually, do you know what they said? We need better bus services. We need young workers to be able to get to their jobs. That's the sort of connectivity that I really think we could be investing in. So that's part of the story as well. So I think all the way from broadband to a really good bus service in this county, which can allow people to travel in a sustainable way, to work, to get those opportunities, to training. Those are the things I think that we need to be investing in to overcome that gap, which is a real gap between the urban and the rural experience, especially for young people, but frankly, for all of us. I mean, one of the things that I think we sometimes forget is that even in rural areas, not everybody has a car, and in those households where there is a car, not everyone has access to the car keys. And we do have to overcome that. And the only way we can overcome that is with a much, much better public transport system, and then a bit of imaginative thinking about car clubs and shared vehicles and what's called total transport. In other words, the fact that we have vehicles running around the county, taking kids to school or delivering post, but then they're not available for people to travel in as well. Actually, there's solutions you can bring about with that. Some of that involves a little bit of clever tech, but actually those total transport solutions are being piloted in all sorts of places around the world, and we should be doing that in counties like Shropshire.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, I'll give Daniel a chance to respond to some of those specific things in a minute. But just Helen, just give us your take first on the connectivity specifically, and obviously we'll broaden it out into more of the infrastructure debate, I think, as well.
So thank you. So digital connectivity is probably the top issue in Shropshire after health, I would say. Certainly on my travels around the county, talking to both people who have a problem from a domestic perspective and for people who run a business. There are two elements. Obviously, there's your broadband, your fixed line, and then there's your mobile connectivity, and they are different beasts. In North Shropshire, we're lucky enough to be benefiting from Project Gigabit, which should resolve a lot of the broadband issues. It hasn't been rolled out yet, but it is in train, and I hope that is a success, and I'm entirely supportive of it. The mobile signal problem is different, and it is supposed to be being resolved by something called the Shared Rural Network, which is a government project which encouraged required the 4 mobile network operators to put £500 million into solving the issue of partial not spots, so places where you can only get one signal from one provider, and where the government would put £500 million into total not spots, which are largely identified as being in Scotland and Wales, so possibly not of as much interest to us here in North Shropshire. There is a big problem with this project in that, firstly, the data for that project is based on Ofcom's coverage maps, and anybody who lives in a rural part of Shropshire will know that they do not reflect the lived reality of people on the ground. I live in Harmer Hill, which is supposed to have pretty good coverage, and I work in Wen, which is supposed to have pretty good coverage when I'm in my constituency office, and they're both awful. You can't make a phone call when you drive down the A5 from Oswald Street to Shrewsbury. The maps are not fit for purpose. But the problem is the contract has been drawn up based on those maps. And secondly, EE, which owns more of the infrastructure than any other business, didn't reach an agreement to share its infrastructure with the other mobile network operators. So there's a problem there as well. So I've run quite a long campaign on this. I've met with all of the mobile network operators. I've met with the local government authority who are trying to, association, who are trying to resolve this problem as well. And I've done a private members bill, which would require those operators to share their equipment more effectively between each other, but also if they won't agree or can't reach commercial terms on that, to allow rural roaming where your phone hooks up to the signal that is available to you. We need to resolve this problem because it isn't only important to run a decent business, and we're all working flexibly and on the move in our businesses now, so it's mission critical for businesses, but it's also important for resilience in power cuts and storms, for example. Absolutely the most important part of digital connectivity that hasn't been addressed. And if I have the honour of being re-elected, I will continue to campaign for that as a top priority, not just for North Shropshire, but for the whole of rural Britain.
Daniel.
Well, this is when Owen Patterson was the MP for North Shropshire, and also Philip Dunn, the MP for Ludlow. I mean, one thing is absolutely clear: you can't resolve this by yourself as a member of Parliament. You've got to work with other Shropshire MPs collaboratively. One of the biggest problems that we have, I think, is that our county is not united. Our county has been artificially cut up, Shropshire and Telford. And one of the things that I would love to have is an amalgamation of both councils and just to have one council for the whole of Shropshire. Because every time you are negotiating with a government department or with a national body, you've got Norfolk in front of you, you've got Somerset behind you, they go in collectively. And my experience of being the MP for Shrewsbury for the last 19 years is that is not the case in Shropshire. And every time we go in, this divide between Telford and the rest of Shropshire is very counterintuitive and very harmful for our county. All the other counties around the United Kingdom seem to be much more united and have a uniform voice when they are lobbying on behalf of our county. That is not the case here in Shropshire. But of course, when Owen Paterson was your MP and Philip Dunn was the MP for Ludlow, we had regular meetings with Shropshire Council every month where we discussed this problem with the leadership of the council, and we collectively wrote to the appropriate national companies to try to ensure that more investment came here to Shropshire. It's not the same problem for us in Shrewsbury and Telford as it is in North and South Shropshire. But I have taken individual companies to meet with operators in London and will continue to, from Shrewsbury, and will continue to do so. The North West Relief Road has been mentioned by my Green opponent, and one of the biggest dangers to our economy is now the complexity and the power that is draining away from government, draining away from those who are meant to be delivering these projects for you, like MPs, like myself, like technicians, like Shrewsbury Business Chamber. It was Shrewsbury Business Chamber, the late Graham Gallies, some of you will remember, came to see me 10 years ago in his office. He put a massive a map of Shrewsbury on his desk, and he said to me, I expect you, as the MP, to secure the funding for the North West Relief Road, to complete the ring road around Shrewsbury. It is critical for our community. And this is a medieval town which is seeing a huge influx of people coming into Shrewsbury from the Black Country, from Birmingham. We have a massive construction of homes, a huge work practices are changing, huge numbers of people coming to this small medieval town, and it's struggling to cope with the traffic. And yet what happens? We have the Greens and others with enormous amount of power. Each individual has enormous amount of power to try to thwart and prevent these projects from taking place. We had the Secretary of State for Transport in Shrewsbury yesterday, Mark Harper, and I have secured £170 million from the government to complete the North West Relief Road. A specific instruction. This is a Member of Parliament listening to the business community, listening to the Shrewsbury Business Chamber. It was an instruction given to me as the Member of Parliament. I secured the initial funding in February 2019. We are still not at construction, and costs have massively gone up as a result of the delays. The latest delay, of course, from our friends at the Environment Agency, is because a bridge is being built relatively close to the aquifer where drinking water is extracted to provide water for Shrewsbury residents. We're not building a nuclear power station. We're not building some sort of a chemical plant. And by the way, the Victorians managed to build bridges quite happily without the interference of the Environment Agency. We've got to the stage, and whether it's HS2, I supported HS2, critical infrastructure project. The Victorians understood that you build not just for yourself, but you build for future generations. You plant a row of trees, you may not enjoy the shade, but those who follow you will take advantage of it. We have now reached a point where critical infrastructure projects, whether it's HS2, whether it's the North West Relief Road, are either being destroyed or their costs are rising massively because of the conduct of people like the Green candidate who seek to obstruct and oppose all of these essential infrastructure projects because of their obsession with the environment, not taking into consideration jobs and prosperity.
I'm going to open this up to the floor in a minute, Daniel, but just before, if anybody's got any questions or comments they want to say on that, and then I'll give our Green colleague an opportunity. Question in the third row here. Let's just, microphone on its way down to you. So here we go.
Thank you very much. I think businesses in Shrewsbury are interested in when the North West Relief Road will be built, and that any information on that will be helpful, but also on the town centre redevelopment, because that lots of planning applications, I believe, are being held up pending some visibility on when the redevelopment will take place. I don't know if the panel have any views on that.
I'll ask them in a minute. Just before you do, just a question just in front of you, if you can pass the microphone as well, and we'll...
Hi, Felicity Wingrove. I'm a small business owner, but I'm also here as one of the founding directors of Telford Business Board. So just picking up Daniel's point about the unification of the county, I believe we tried that with the LEP, which failed miserably, and the government pulled the entire proposition of LEPs and did what most business owners wanted them to do, which is ask business to provide a voice and instead put funding through local authorities. So it was leaner and much more targeted. We're doing quite well in Telford. We're quite happy to be ruling ourselves. So no, thank you.
Danny, let me ask Julian to come in first before we do. Just
Thank you very much.
Let me give Julian.
I welcome Daniel claiming that I have enormous power. I have to disagree. I'm a single member of the planning committee. As it happens, I am a member of the planning committee, and I did vote against the road. I was overruled. The Conservatives have a majority. They voted it through. We have three Conservative MPs in the county, as Daniel has said. We have a Conservative council. They haven't managed to get the road through. The reason they haven't managed to get the road through is because there are some absolutely legitimate concerns, which the Environment Agency is concerned about, Natural England is concerned about, and many other people are concerned about. Daniel seems to suggest that he should just be able to override that. That somehow power has seeped away from our MP towards these agencies who actually are looking after our environment for us. I think that would be extraordinarily dangerous if we were in a situation where MPs could override things in that way. Just the final point on this, Daniel is celebrating the fact that there's been 3 Tory MPs who've worked closely with Shropshire Council. Shropshire Council is now £62 million in debt this year, having already cut £50 million last year. So it's not a great track record of the 3 Tory MPs working with Shropshire Council.
Okay, thank you. And just very quickly.
I passionately disagree with the lady there who says, no, we're all right in Telford, thank you very much. We can do our own thing. One of the greatest things, there is nothing more important than the safety of patients at the hospital, and particularly the safety of patients in A&E. We have 2 hospitals, 13 miles. If you look at this auditorium here, that is Shropshire and Mid Wales. This whole building is Shropshire and Mid Wales. And these 2 little pinpricks next to each other, those are the 2 hospitals, just 13 miles apart. They cover the whole of Shropshire and Mid Wales. We secured £312 million 6.5 years ago for a modernisation of A&B services at our local hospital trust. And it wasn't me. It wasn't civil servants in London. It wasn't politicians. Due to the landscape reforms, the power for these changes has been moved towards people who are at the coalface of providing these services. The surgeons, doctors and clinicians who work in the hospital trust. 300 local surgeons came to us and said, for patient safety, the most important thing that we can do is a reconfiguration of services with the main A&E at Shrewsbury and women and children's services at Shrewsbury. That was 6.5 years ago. We secured £312 million, the biggest investment into the NHS in the history of Shropshire. 7 years on, we are only just now going to construction. And the tug of war that we have had with Telford, who refuse to understand the interdependence between both towns, is really, really damaging for the hospital trust and really damaging for our county.
But let me bring Row into this one then. Your response to that?
Talking of the NHS, I mean, we all owe it our lives to. And, you know, I was talking to an elderly lady in Albrighton yesterday, and she said, I broke my hip and I waited 12 hours for an ambulance to arrive. And it was the horror that she spoke about was just unimaginable. We are one of the richest countries in the world with a bankrupted, crippled health service, education service. Every bit of our public services have been crippled. Telford and the Wrekin are being left without an A&E. Now, my son's sitting there. He was hit by a car when he was a child. The nightmare of any parent, just imagine that happens to your own child. That was the worst moment of my life. Think about it. You're in Telford, you'd need to wait for an ambulance or the A&E to be in Shrewsbury. You don't have access to it. Anything happens to your loved one, you'd need to go all the way from Telford or any part of the Wrekin to Shrewsbury. Who's done that? Daniel has done that, and he's proud of it. My director... And the,
Two hospitals are 13 miles apart. They cover the whole of the population.
no, but I'm talking about... so what do you have to say to that lady who has to wait 12 hours for an ambulance, and when their ambulance arrives, it has to drive almost 20, 25 miles to get her to an A&E? So it's everybody else's fault then? So it's somebody else's fault?
So
So it is somebody else's fault? So you're forcing it through the people's throat. People are uniformly against it, but you're forcing the thing down their throat. No, my wife's a nurse. My wife's a nurse. You know what you've done to the NHS? I know it doesn't bother you because you earn enough money from the Saudis, and your colleague in the Wrekins, and your colleagues, and your colleague earns enough from his other 4 jobs. But you know, real people in the streets, in Telford, anywhere in Shropshire, you go and ask them. They're suffering because of your actions.
let me give everybody else an opportunity then to have a scoop. We've obviously gone into a little bit more into the hospital debate. Helen, what's your take? I mean, I guess one of the things the question that's sort of been skirted around here is one hospital enough? Where should it be? Should there be 2? You know, where are we at with all of this?
So I don't think I have any expertise in how to run a hospital or indeed how to build one. I'm a chartered accountant, and I have been given a briefing by clinical specialists at Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital Trust that given the budget that they have, the proposal that they have come up with is the best they can do. So is it the optimal solution that we could build with an endless budget? Probably not. Is it the best that some people who understand how to run a hospital can do? They think so, and therefore I'm inclined to support them. I don't always agree with Daniel, you won't be surprised to know, but he is right, those hospitals support not just the people of Shropshire, but the whole of the population of Mid Wales. It is a vast, vast area. And when we have challenged those clinical specialists on what if it takes me 20 minutes longer to get to A&E? What if I had a stroke and time is of the essence and it's going to take me 20 minutes longer to get to A&E? It's a really valid question, a really valid point. And of course, people are very, very worried about it. But their answer is, it is better to get the right treatment first time than to get the wrong treatment first time and then be transferred again to a different hospital. So I would like to have seen more money, a big new hospital. Of course I would. I'm a politician. I'd have liked to have seen a politician cut the ribbon on something shiny and new. That wasn't ever going to be the deal. And therefore, I think we have to trust the people who are responsible for delivering the services to do what they can. And as I say, I don't often agree with Daniel, but turning the provision of health services in a finite budget with a finite period of time into a 7-year political football, I don't think has served anybody in this county very well.
Let me give Alan and Julian a chance to have a say yet, because they haven't had a say on this. Julian, just...
As somebody who's been active in the campaign to defend the two A&Es in Shropshire, I have to say, first of all, that the clinicians are not all united on this issue. And also, we do actually, I think, have to take stock and take account of the fact that the leadership of Shrewsbury and Telford hospitals has not got a very good track record. The maternity care in this county has been a scandal, it has been criminal, and it has hit national headlines time and time again. So I'm not confident that we can take our lead from those same managers. But I would also say this, that I think it's not just about the A&Es, it's about a general drive towards centralising all the services. So we've lost local maternity care, we've been losing community hospitals, we've been losing access to all sorts of services which traditionally were much closer to people's homes. And going back to the point about connectivity, actually that business of local services close to people's homes is more sustainable, it's better for outcomes, for health outcomes, That's where the investment needs to be. So we need to roll back from the centralisation of these services. And actually, just to pick up on Helen's point, Helen said, and she used the words, given the budget. Well, I'm not accepting that. I don't think we have to accept the budget. I think we have to be fighting for the sort of investment in health in this country, which means that we can have a proper accident and emergency service for a 70,000 person town of Shrewsbury and the hinterland and Wales, and also for Telford, which has its own growing and young population. There's no reason why we shouldn't have emergency services in both of those centres. And I do not accept that we have to cut our cloth according to a shrinking budget, which is destroying the NHS.
Alan, just finish us off on this hospital debate.
I've never done one of these events before, so I didn't realise you just made up questions in your head and answered those. Well, that's quite interesting. Just to go back to what the point that Felicity was making, I think she was talking about manufacturing. We've got very different needs in Telford. We're not rural, we're very manufacturer-based, so that was the point. On the hospital, I mean, we're going to be the largest town in the UK without a fully operational A&E, which just seems really strange to everybody in Telford that we're sort of losing some of our services. And I've forgotten what the original question was now because it was so long ago.
Well, it's just very much, where do you stand on the hospital debate?
Oh, yeah, I think that we should have maybe more money and keep the A&E fully operational in Telford as well as having one in Shrewsbury. I completely get that we're serving sort of a wider, going into Wales or Shrewsbury, but we're quite a growing population in Telford and we need a fully operational A&E.
I'm conscious we could probably talk about this one all night, and by keeping an eye on the time, there's loads of other things I want to get through. So if it's all right with you, I'll change the subject completely now, folks. Very briefly, Dan, just briefly.
I'm very grateful to the lady who's asked about the town centre, because of course Shrewsbury has more listed buildings than any other town in England. Tourism is our #1 income generator, and yet the whole of the centre of Shrewsbury, the Riverside Shopping Centre, and all of that area, is obviously 1970s, falling apart, redundant, and completely dilapidated. I secured funding from the Levelling Up Fund, the only successful bid for Shropshire from the Levelling Up Fund. And Mark Barrow at Shropshire Council tells me that as they rescope, that funding, by the way, is going to be the seed funding, the catalyst for a whole redevelopment and reconstruction of Shrewsbury Town Centre. That's going to provide huge new opportunities for the construction of new services, new accommodation, office accommodation, hotel accommodation. It's going to become the biggest brownfield site development in Shropshire, and it's potentially going to attract hundreds of millions of pounds of private sector investment in Shrewsbury. So I'm very proud to have secured that funding from the Levelling Up Fund.
Okay, that's brief enough, I think so.